So hi, Aaron. Thanks for joining us today. It's great to have sort of part of this experience and learning, your experiences as a technical official and others that have sort of, brought you to this point in time.
Yeah, well, thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me. Always happy to give up my time for the betterment of the sport, and also, personally engage with yourself.
Yeah.
Living in Victoria and me up here in Canberra, we don't get the opportunity to catch up very often. So
no, it's certainly it's at events you tend to catch up with people like yourself and people we've met through the program. Just give a little bit of your background anyway. You're in Canberra now, but did you grow up in Canberra, or where did you come from?
Look, I always say I'm South Australian, but I have lived in Canberra since I was 10. So I probably, the correct answer is I grew up in Canberra.
Yep.
But, I was originally born in Adelaide, and as you know, Michael, still have strong ties there to the football and the Port Adelaide Football Club. I know that doesn't necessarily align
it's
with
one of those things I can never understand about you, but that's fine. Obviously, myself being a Crow supporter, but yeah, I can.
That's all right.
It's probably you can have one failure in life.
Well, we try. We can collate and come together on all things South Australia, but football we have to divulge there. That's
right. I agree to disagree on that one. So how did you first get involved with the sport of triathlon anyway?
So I got involved with the sport of triathlon for off-season training for Australian rules football. Yep. So I was never a great player, but at the age of 16, I turned my hand to umpiring Australian football, and really enjoyed that. And so my winters were spent umpiring Australian football. And as you would appreciate, Michael, and some of our other listeners, it's quite a physically intense form of officiating, umpiring Australian rules football. There's a lot of physical involvement. So I was looking for something to do over summer, and I'd always ridden a bike, and obviously running was part of my winter. So I thought if I could swim a bit, I could probably give this triathlon thing a go, and it would keep me fit during the summer so that I wouldn't come back to pre-season umpires training out of shape and playing catch up. So I got involved through one of the clubs here in Canberra, just one of the come and try novice type programs, through the Bilbies Club. It's one of the bigger clubs here in Canberra.
How long ago was this?
Look, this was 2001.
Okay.
The summer when I sort of first did my first triathlon. And from there, I think it becomes a case of you do one length triathlon, then you want to do a longer one and a longer one. And, it just becomes all consuming. And at the time, without a wife and kids, you've got the time to, put in those ridiculous hours of training that, professional athletes, Ironman athletes, and indeed people who are involved in the sport of triathlon like to do.
So over a period of time, you took it up to the point of doing an Ironman yourself?
Yeah, so I've done a couple of Ironmans, Xterra World Championships. I played on that side of the sport, but it was probably about 2009, I think, off the top of my head, 2010, when I decided, maybe if I'm at a race going down to watch friends and I'm not actually competing, there's probably something more I could be doing than standing around watching.
Yep.
And given my background, at this point in time, I'd been umpiring Australian rules football for 14, 15 years. Officiating was part of my makeup. So I thought, well, I might as well learn about how the officiating side of triathlon works and get involved.
How did you find those early days? Obviously, coming from a Australian rules football background and already being an established umpire to now being in the world of triathlon as an official umpire.
It was a change because obviously umpiring football is you're making decisions all the time that at that moment they're very decisive decisions and it has a direct impact on the game at that moment. Whereas triathlon officiating, it can be largely hands off to some degree. Mm-hmm. So facilitating the safety and the smooth running of the event, and obviously having to hand out penalties when they occur. But I guess it's that sort of instantaneous side of officiating that occurs with Australian rules football that isn't necessarily there in triathlon. I don't know if does that make sense?
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, going back, let's take it back to you, like, I suppose your very first experience as
Yep,
a triathlon official. Can you recall where that was or
I
what happened?
can. So my very first race after doing the level 1 course was the Canberra half Ironman, and I was working in the penalty box. So
Okay.
I got to see the side of triathlon, which is the athletes who come in and like to tell their case, I guess, to the penalty box official, and
Yep.
espouse their innocence or otherwise. But no, it was enjoyable, and I think at first I found it a lot slower than obviously officiating football, in terms of just the length of the event. Obviously, particularly that first one being a
I
half
mean, going to a
Ironman.
half Ironman, you didn't sort of
Yeah,
start with this little sprint race, did you?
it's a lot. No. Well, that just happened to be the
Yeah.
race that was 2 days after doing the level 1 course.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, they certainly longer days. Even if you just have a sprint distance event with a few, or a club event, by the time you come in and people are registered, check their bikes in, the race happens. It can be a good couple of hours.
Yep.
But again, the thing that I enjoyed the most was just the working with other officials and meeting other officials. People tend to think of officiating as a very individual type of thing. But, in every sort of form of officiating I've been involved in, through whether it's football or triathlon, it's never the case. It's a very team thing.
Okay.
One official can't go out and umpire a game of football or a game of rugby or netball. There's always a team of officials working together to achieve the outcome. And even with triathlon, it's no different. Whether it's, 3 or 4 people working a local small event in a country town somewhere, through till,
Yep.
the 30 odd that you get at an ITU event.
Yep.
It's everyone has their part to play, and you can't get the outcome you want without that team aspect. And I think that's what I quite enjoy about officiating now,
Yep.
is that it's a team outlet, even though it's not necessarily a team sport.
Yeah. I mean, certainly your sort of view of officiating has evolved over time. And we all have people who've influenced us throughout your sort of officiating career. What were some of the things that early people imparted to you that have stayed with you?
Oh, I think I go back, and sort of the early people in my triathlon career was obviously, being in Canberra, was Gay Webster, but also Jane Seaborn.
Yep.
So a name from the past. It was there, particularly when you start taking on race referee roles at a local race, or here in Canberra, I guess our state championships are still relatively small compared to some of the other states. Taking on a role like that was, it's more, as you get into those senior sort of roles within the team and leading the team, it's less about the hands-on officiating for you personally, and sort of managing and entrusting your team to make the right decisions that for the event to go run smoothly, and having the trust and faith in the people who are on your team to support you in your role as the race referee or the technical delegate.
Okay. Can you recall a time when you were you're thrust into that role? You may not necessarily have the skill sets to obviously do the role that you do today.
Yep.
Can you recall a time that occurred and how you dealt with it at the time?
I think so. I mean, I guess, I was one of those people who, once I'd been officiating for a while and started to enjoy it and wanting to develop my officiating skills further, was someone who was like, I guess, would actively seek out some of those roles and get in the ear of people like Gay Webster here in the ACT and say, hey, keen to do the level 2 course. I want to further my career and, do some race referee or TD type work.
Have you ever had those situations where you have been sort of sinking a bit and you've had to call in some other resources?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the great part. That's one that goes back to the whole team aspect of triathlon. Like, I was given these opportunities, and you're not necessarily, yes, you're in charge, so people are going to do what you say and respect your the way that you want things done. However, early on, it was never a case of you being out there alone, so Gay or Tarita, who here in Canberra, who started a bit before me, who also had some experience, Jane. So some of these other officials were present at the event as well. Okay. So, whether they were officiating or not, they were there so that if you found yourself just completely like, I'm overwhelmed, I don't know how to handle this, you always had someone to go back to and say, look, what's going on? How can I approach this? So, I guess it comes down to that sort of mentoree type role. And, I've never been one to, I think I've never sort of had a formal mentor per se, but I've developed a network of contacts around Australia now that I will happily call, and Lyndall in Queensland is a good one. I've called her from 7 a.m. in the morning at a race site here in Canberra. And, whether she was happy or not at the time, she said she did take my call and very helpful. Yeah. But, and that was just simply to get an outsider's view, someone outside of Canberra, because obviously, in your own jurisdiction, things tend to develop a certain way. And, we're trying to build that level of consistency across the country. So it's always good to reach out to someone. So,
And certainly, it's good. You've always got that time. I suppose is something to be mindful of for new officials. Is you have got the time. We don't have to necessarily make critical decisions in those moments.
No, and to be honest with you, the temptation may be there. We really need to make a decision. Let's make one now. But just having 5 minutes to make a phone call or two and step back and think about the issue, and then come back to address it. Once you're armed with the necessary information that you've obtained by making these liaisons, I think we're much better off. We make a stronger position, and it's much more consistent across the board.
Yeah, and I know go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, and it's not even necessarily on race day. And as officials and those who've been in roles where they're the TD will know, a lot of planning goes into an event before the event happens. And we had this summer in Canberra where we had horrible weather conditions and smoke, like basically had moved in and was residing in the city. And we had a round of the Australian Youth and Junior Series that was meant to occur here. And, I was getting really worried that the conditions were not going to allow this event to go ahead. So I was, several weeks out starting to make the phone calls and, to people like Frank Stapleton over in Western Australia and obviously the TA high performance guys, because it was largely their event, and starting to say, we need to come to a decision on this and starting to, I guess, even before then, call in all the information that, to make a decision as the technical delegate on a recommendation whether we should proceed with the event, given the weather conditions that were occurring at the time.
Yeah, and that was due to the air quality that mainly the bushfires happening at the time.
We had, the smoke here in Canberra was really bad for, the better part of a month. And, we had several events here cancelled during the summer, which, wasn't great for a local perspective. Getting back and there's some of those local events are the ones I like to go to and help out. And that's, develop those new officials who've done their level 1 or just stepping up to level 2 to, and that's where they get their opportunities. And I certainly like to go down and give back and help and mentor in a loose fashion at some of those events to help people develop their skills as well.
Yeah, there's something you've certainly expressed that you love sort of giving those opportunities to be developed. Obviously, we do learn a little bit when we're sort of put into situations where we're not totally, I suppose, competent. It might be a new role. Was there a moment where someone put some faith in you to do a role, and helped you develop those skills?
Yeah, I think a lot of it I think the one where I was sort of I'd just done the level 1 ITU course. I hadn't been long out of that, and I think we came up to Penrith for a para-tri. You were there, Michael. You remember this one? It was 38 degrees on the Saturday, and then bucketing down rain.
Oh, poor rain the next day, yeah.
On Sunday for the para-triathletes, and not long out of having done the level 1 ITU course, was put in as the chief race official for that event. And that was certainly for me a sink or swim moment. Particularly, it's a small team. It can be sometimes at some of these events, and a lot smaller than ideally you would like for an OTU or an ITU style event. Okay, it was a case for me of you're not 100% sure of what the role entails or what you're going to have to do, but just get in there, do the best you can. And, for me personally, I was like, I know, I was saying to myself, I know, you're a good official and you know how the sport works. So just, get in there, do it to the best of your ability, and don't be afraid to ask questions. And I think, you probably had something to do with the assignments for that particular event, Michael, I'd imagine.
Oh, yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so
I saw and knew the potential.
You were the race referee, yeah.
The potential, so, and I spoke with obviously the TD. I think it was Pete Weaver at the time from New Zealand, yeah. And you look at the people you've got and go, okay, yeah, this person hasn't done this role before, but yeah, I believe they can actually take it on and do a good job.
Yeah. Did I make some mistakes that weekend? Yeah, sure. I went away driving home back to Canberra and thinking, I could have done this better, or I really dropped the ball on this particular aspect of that role. But, I came back and went, that's all right. I can make myself a better official for having done these learnings. And, it might be, particularly in the ITU world, it might be another dozen or so races before you get the opportunity to do that role again. So, it's important that when you do get given a role that you're not familiar with, don't be afraid of it, but embrace it and learn all you can. I've gone to events before where I've been given a new role that I hadn't done before. And the first thing I do is I start, again, making phone calls, talking to people. I'm chief transition for this race. What am I going to expect? What sort of things should I be looking out for? What will my role entail? Where am I likely to drop, if something doesn't get done, that it's going to, negatively impact everything else. So, it's a case of not shying away from it, but being prepared, having a bit of knowledge about what you're going into, and then backing your judgment. And again, it comes back to, there's always, unless you're the technical delegate at the Olympics, there's always going to be someone else there who is going to be able to support you if things aren't going 100% right.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly builds certain resilience in that time. And it's a really important lesson to learn that, you can learn from those experiences, even if, Pete was a skilled TD, but even with a TD that perhaps doesn't have the great skill set, and you don't have the best experience, there will be opportunities to certainly learn out of that. And one thing I can probably, when we go forward now and look at, Devonport last year, if you're the ATD for a world para triathlon series event, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. And, I think for me, it's just, yes, you work hard as an official, and I've always been of the mantra, I'll go and do whatever task I've given, and I'll do it to the best of my abilities and let my abilities speak for themselves. And if that means I get recognised and get opportunities, that's great. But to some degree, I think I've just largely been in the right place at the right time for certain things. A lot of that in Australia was the build up to the Commonwealth Games, where the opportunities were there, 6 or 7 years prior to that, or maybe not quite that much, maybe about 5 years prior to that. Obviously TA realised that we had a shortage of, level international, what do we call them? Continental triathlon technical officials, the CTOs.
Yeah.
To be able to, adequately represent an Australian contingent of officials at the Commonwealth Games. And I think, I just happened to be at the right place in my career to make those steps when those opportunities were being presented, which certainly helped me and further my career. But you're right, I've got to the stage where now the ITU are selecting me as assistant technical delegate for, a World Paratriathlon Series event, which is, outside of the Paralympics, the highest level of the sport for those athletes.
Yeah.
And I've had the opportunity now to work at Devonport for the last 3 years and work alongside Tony Sangster from New Zealand and then Claire this year. Mm-hmm. Both very different people in the way they approach their role as a technical delegate. But that's what you want. You want to work with people who are very different so that you can see, you learn the many ways that people will approach the same mm-hmm. task. And, what works for one person doesn't work for another. And, you might say, I personally could do something the way that Claire does it in this regard. And when it comes to something else, I'd see myself doing it the way Tony might do it. Okay. And of course, and then you've got yourself, you were down there for one of those events too. So, working with other senior officials, again, and
would you say your style is almost adaptive? Like you've looked at the different qualities of different people, be it myself, Tony, Claire, Frank, other people in the program going, oh, I like the way they do that and I'll adopt that?
I think, obviously everyone has their own way of doing things anyway. So everyone will approach something slightly differently, and that's just personalities. But definitely I do like to think that I'm adaptive, and I will look at the way people do things and say, I really like the way that Claire's approached this. And I think, in future, if I was in that role, I'd certainly take that on board. Other ways, I like the way that Tony or Michael, yourself or Frank or, might approach things and then obviously as you want to evolve in that role yourself, you look to make changes to your own way of undertaking those roles and responsibilities. And the best way to progress is to work with others and take bits and pieces from everyone and put it into what you think works best then for you.
Yeah. That's a good way of certainly looking at it. Just going back into your life, I mean, different people have different lives around sort of triathlon and officiating. And some people go, oh, it's great for you. You've got all this free time. You can go around the country or internationally and do all these races. You've got a young family. How do you sort of balance sort of the requirements, which can be quite demanding at times of a technical delegate style role or, going to other events? Yeah,
look, it's tough. And I know that I've reached sort of the stage of an officiating career that if I want to progress, I need to start looking at traveling to different events. But, I'm realistic with that too, to some degree. You do touch on, I have a young family, I have 2 young boys, they're 7 and 5. You're traveling, officiating, while it's great, it can be expensive. It's a lot of it's out of your own pocket. And so, I guess me personally, where I'm at the moment, it's really about choosing events that I think will allow me to have some sort of development opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I guess, working within the limitations and the confines that I have in enabling myself to get to a large number of events each season is being very, very picky. Picky sounds it doesn't sound like the right word.
Selective, maybe?
Selective, yeah. But, looking at events and saying, if I was to go there, that would be a good development opportunity for me.
Yep. Okay.
And I guess, I like a lot of people, you don't have a limited resource and budget to travel to lots of events. So,
I'm sure if we win Powerball tomorrow, we go, oh yes, I'm going to travel the world doing events.
That's it.
And I'll go to Hamburg and I'll go here. And
yep. And with the Powerball win, I'd take my family, and then my wife wouldn't care that I'm going away for a weekend because she's coming to Yokohama or something like that.
Back to that. Whereas, it's sports tourism at its best, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And, while that is one of the large attractions of officiating at the higher levels is traveling to exotic places like Devonport. And working with people you don't work with very often.
Yeah, you sort of say Devonport, yes. If for those people who know Devonport in Australia, it's not like it's a vibrant, exciting place, maybe like the Gold Coast is viewed. But what's the value in officials in going to something like Devonport?
To be honest with Michael, Devonport is... I was asked the other day what my favourite event in Australia is to go to as an official. And I said that it was Busselton 70.3, marginally in front of Devonport. And why? I like Busselton.
Yep. You got the photo behind you there, which is
I got the photo behind me.
Yeah.
I've developed a lot of good friendships with a lot of the Western Australian officials, and they always look after travelling officials over there. It's a good event. It's a decent size. Yeah, in May we have some trouble with some iffy weather, and they have some large fish over there that cause trouble at times.
Yep.
But I just like the feeling around that event. But in terms of a pure event to go to really develop your officiating skills, I don't think you can go past Devonport and what's put on there over the last couple of years. So Michael Bonney, the race director down there, does a fantastic job putting on a world-class event in, as you said, a town that isn't vibrant. It's not Mooloolaba. It doesn't have 4,000 age groupers rocking in and giving it that whole festival atmosphere. But the quality of event that is put on for the para-triathletes in Devonport is really high. And on that weekend, we usually have an Oceania Cup. The last couple of years, we've had a Oceania Cup, a World Series or World Cup level para-triathlon, youth and junior racing, mixed team relays, all in the space of, a day and a half.
Yep.
And it's a full-on busy weekend. But as an official, it's an event where you go to and you will get the opportunities that you won't get at a bigger event.
Okay.
Mooloolaba is a good event and it's big and it's a World Cup and it's flashy, but you've also got 60 officials wanting to officiate there.
Yep.
And there's a massive age group race, and you may not get to be the race referee for the World Cup or, a sexy chief position, but you can't. No, I'm sounding really rude against Mooloolaba. That's fun. I've been there.
No, it's different for everyone, and this is where it's really important. Is people have favourite events for different reasons. Like I'll speak to someone else and they go, "Oh, I love Mooloolaba because X, Y, Z," and it could have been their first experience. You love Devonport.
I love Devonport because of the fact it is this year it was the highest level ITU race we had in Australia this year. It was World Para Triathlon Series.
Wow. You look at the standard of that event compared to, say, Penrith, where we're in ankle deep water,
we had a full field of 70 para triathletes.
Yeah.
Busting their guts to qualify for, maybe the 2021 Tokyo Olympics or Paralympics. But it was a big event. International field, very professional. The athletes come. Even a lot of
live broadcast.
Yeah, live broadcast. So, we had everything that Mooloolaba has, but in terms of it being, I guess it's a lot tighter knit event because of the fact that it's not part of a flashy festival.
Yeah.
And we did it on 20. I think we had 24 officials, which was the largest number we've had in Devonport for a couple of years.
Yep.
And all of those officials get given a chance to do a role they may not get to do at at
a bigger event, e.g. a Mooloolaba or a World Triathlon Series.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
They get experience of, usually 4 or 5 different types of elite level racing over the weekend, whether it's mixed team relay, OTU Cup, para triathlon, youth and junior racing, which, quite often, is slightly different format because that's the way that they run their youth and junior series.
Yep. So I think the secret's out there. The Devonport is a great race to put on your officiating calendar, and I think we're going to find that certainly going to grow in officials' eyes. Like, oh yeah, I'd love to get Devonport because
Devonport, it's a hard place to get to. It's not like I could fly to Brisbane and drive up to Mooloolaba or catch the shuttle bus, But I think the last 2 years we've pretty much had almost the same team, and that's because people came, they enjoyed it. They enjoyed the team camaraderie. Everyone stays in the same hotel. We all go out to dinner together at the 1 or 2 restaurants open in Devonport at 7 o'clock when we finish.
That's right.
On the Friday. So I think, there's the team aspect and everyone, we've had the last 2 years had 5 or 6 people come from Western Australia to Devonport.
Yeah.
That's got to say something for what people are getting out of it if they're coming all the way from Perth to Devonport.
Yeah. Is there something, let's look forward in the next 2 years. Is there sort of events or experiences you've got on your radar or skills you'd like to acquire over the next couple of years? We're at a time where we can't do much at the moment, but then we don't have much at this time of year in the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah, no, I guess, looking forward, I was, looking forward to the opportunities that the Multisport World Championships would throw up in 2021. We'll have to wait and see how that develops in the current environment, but you'd like to think by that time next year we'd be in a position where we, international travel is resumed and we can, go ahead and put that event on up in Townsville.
Yep.
But, I think, ideally, we had the opportunity to go to the Commonwealth Games on the Gold Coast in 2018.
Yep.
They roll around again in 2022. It's a very competitive selection process. Obviously, there's a lot of good officials in Australia. And being an overseas event, we won't get the same numbers we had here in Australia. But, there's always that in the back of my mind. That'd be a great opportunity to be a part of.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I missed out on the TD role at the Oceania Continental Championships at Moreton Bay in April.
With all everything shutting down.
The whole coronavirus fiasco, shutting that down. So, that's disappointing because you put a lot of work into it.
Yeah.
Yes, it was in April and, it was sort of 5 or 6 weeks out when I knew that event was going to not go ahead.
Yeah.
But, you start working on these things December, January, when you first sort of get told you're going to be the technical delegate. There's stuff that starts to happen months out from an event at that level that you need to start to work on. So, you put a lot of time and effort in, and even though you're still 5 or 6 weeks out, when it gets cancelled, there's still that, that disappointment that,
totally
go ahead. And, and I feel for the event directors. For me, it's just another opportunity to be an official for them. It's their livelihood. So, while I'm disappointed, I feel for Brendan, who was putting on that event, and, all the other race directors around the country at the moment who are really working out how they're going to keep afloat to, battle through what's going on at the moment.
Yeah, we're not quite sure how we'll sort of come out of this, but through a lot of these times, there's more resilience, more strength is sort of demonstrated through your career, certainly when you've, had the adversity you sort of come through and got yourself to a good point and some good things to look forward to over the next few years. Yeah,
and I think, officiating's taken me places in the sport that I would never have got to as an athlete.
Yep.
And, I enjoyed competing or participating, I guess is probably the more accurate term.
Yep.
And I was handy, but I wasn't great. And I think, officiating, whether it was football or triathlon, I've had opportunities in both those sports that I never would have achieved had I tried to stick it out as someone who was an athlete.
Yeah. No, great. Yeah, I mean, it has. Yeah, it has certainly for a lot of people given that opportunity, which they wouldn't necessarily be an elite athlete to mix it with some of the best elite athletes in the world.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
yeah. So I mean, thanks for your time today. I mean, we could probably come back and do a nice little out on Devonport at some point in time. And
I think we should. Like, if we're both in Devonport next year, I think
we might do something there, put something together for that.
Oh, you should probably get Lucas involved. TA, I think some sort of
So no, that's great, and really appreciate your time, and it's been great chatting with you.
No worries, Michael. Thanks for engaging me today.